Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here on KIDO Talk Radio. Out to our great friend Dan Gaynor joining us from the Media Research Center. Dan, good morning.
Good morning to you. Have you had your lawyer investigated by the by the prosecutors at any time soon?
Boy, crazy.
I mean, the idea that this is where our republic is, where you can't even have, lawyer-client privilege. I mean, what it tells every person in America is if the left is really out to get you, there are no rules, and so you can't literally even confide in your lawyer.
Indeed.
Which I assume your priest is next.
Your priest and everything else. Do want to remind you our KIDO cash code. I was so excited to get to Dan Gaynor is FLY. You can win up to $5,000 here at KIDO Talk Radio. FLY, now FLY. Now back to Dan Gaynor. Let's go over this where we just played the clip in the intro, thanks to Ray Amaya, of our friend Morning Joy talking about that the president was going to barricade himself into the White House and the U.S. Marshals couldn't get him. And then we have Morning Joe urging the First Lady to leave him, saying he's a despicable person. Then you have Mueller doing this and people comparing it to Watergate and the firing of everyone. They've lost their mind.
Don't forget, Chris Matthews basically saying that Trump will bomb Syria to distract from Mueller. And remember, this is the media that complain no matter what Trump does. So if Trump doesn't take action in Syria, well, how can you not take action? Syria is gassing its people. Trump takes action. Well, it's wag the dog. Trump's trying to distract. It's a default. No matter what Trump does, the media attack him. I've never seen anything like this. If we were watching a foreign country and this was going on, you would say it's a coup. I'm reluctant to say that for here, but I can certainly see why people think that.
Well, and we saw the exact opposite with President Obama, now former President Obama. No matter what he did, everything was great.
Yeah, when the press stop doing their jobs and become PR agents, that's when what they're doing is not journalism anymore. It's like none of them have read the SBJ Code of Ethics, and if they haven't, then maybe they shouldn't be doing journalism. And a whole bunch of them really shouldn't be doing journalism because that's not really what they're doing anymore at all. People like Brian Stelter from CNN, who I'm going to beat up on every radio show I'm on until sooner or later it gets back to him and he's like, Dan Gaynor said this about, yes, I did. He's the worst example of what journalism has become in the Trump era because he exists only to attack Trump or anybody he perceives steps away from the liberal narrative. So lately that's been Sinclair, but it's Fox, it's us, it's anybody. And then he's like, well, I'm just doing journalism. No, you're not. You don't even know what the word means anymore.
Well, what is the danger of this Trump derangement syndrome that we're seeing in the press and its impact it has on the public?
Well, over the weekend there was a weird circumstance where Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, tweeted out a story which he called a great read. So this was disturbing itself. But it was a story about California, sort of a left-wing take on how California became overwhelmingly liberal and democratic. It sort of ignored the fact that a lot of conservatives said, well, this state is falling apart, I'm leaving. And he gave a big spin about how everything happened. But essentially it was arguing that there's no bipartisan way forward, that there's only winners and losers, and the left needs to win, and that was the argument. So, the more intractable they become, where they don't even want to stand and celebrate good news, like the lowest African American unemployment in history, when that's their worldview, it is hard to look and see what is the bipartisan way going forward.
Dan Gaynor joining us from the Media Research Center. One could argue that has been dead for quite some time, Dan, bipartisanship, except when Republicans are carrying the water, when Republicans take the heat. for something, whether it's a tax increase or something of that nature.
I mean, there's been some bipartisanship. I mean, and you could even argue for all that it was a disaster. The budget was a bipartisan thing because both sides voted for it. The two sides, I mean, they're not to the point where they're caning each other on the floors of Congress yet. So people say this is the worst ever. This isn't even the worst tension in my lifetime.
No, I'd agree.
It's easy to think back to the 60s where we had one president assassinated, we had a presidential candidate and a major national figure assassinated. We had the assassin or purported assassin for the conspiracy theory people in the audience killed as well. We had riots and protests all the time. We had a very unpopular war. I mean, the nation was pretty divided. But by and large, I don't think most people were. Here's how it's different. Social media, which it's a timely thing to discuss since Mark Zuckerberg's testifying in front of the Hill today and tomorrow, the Senate and House. That has done more to activate the American public, motivate the American public, and divide the American public than anything I've ever seen. Gone are the days where ordinary people aren't expressing their opinion on issues of the day. I mean, it used to be you go into a bar and people would talk about sports. People would talk, men are talking about sports, and women, you had like a list of maybe 5 or 6 topics that if you're a guy, you could walk into any bar in America. Doesn't matter your demographics. If you were to toss those 6 topics out, people would talk to you. Now, like you'd ask about the game, or you'd ask about, the stock market or whatever. You could totally avoid politics. Now, no one can. And so whether it's your Twitter feed or your Facebook page or your Instagram account or whatever, you're being bombarded by politics on both sides. And I don't think people like it anymore. We did a poll with McLaughlin and Associates that said 75% of the people, which is more than all the Republicans and independents or all the Democrats and independents. So you're talking a very bipartisan view that they wanted politics out of their entertainment, sports and comedies and award shows and stuff. But we all may want it out of there, but the media want it in there because they know it gets ratings and gets views and pushes their agenda. That's the real problem. Ordinary people now have major die-hard feelings on not 1 or 2 issues, but 20 or 30. And, so it's hard to find common ground, not just on 1 or 2 things, like abortion, that might be something really hot button issue, but anything. And so then you look at going forward, how do we go forward as a nation? And I really don't know the answer. I think social media, which I call anti-social media, has been a disaster. We can't go back. We can't eliminate it because you can't eliminate technology. Like you can't get rid of nukes either. But the truth of the matter is, it's done a lot of harm.
Dan Gaynor joining us at KIDO Talk Radio from the Media Research Center. So what do you make of Jimmy Kimmel and Sean Hannity?
Well, I like one of them, can't stand the other. Let's face it, Jimmy Kimmel is a scumbag. He's made his career as a scumbag. If you go back to the Man Show, he did some very non-innocent things, kind of sexually harassing women. It was part of the Man Show shtick. And if you're going to do that, Adam Carolla did it. Adam Carolla has never really changed. I mean, he's just sort of like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to be manly. Jimmy Kimmel turned around and became like the Me Too guy. And so that just makes him a hypocrite or an agenda-driven idiot or something. I'm not really sure what he is exactly, except a mouthpiece for the left. And so all he does is attack people, and there's no consequences. He can attack Melania Trump. No consequences for him to speak of. Laura Ingraham makes a casual comment to one of the Parkland students not about the agenda or the shooting, but just about him trying to get into using Twitter to basically try to lawyer up and get into the colleges he wanted to get into, using sort of his social media presence to do that. And she made a minor comment that she probably shouldn't have made, and it's open warfare, and she's losing advertisers, and the media are piling on her. But there's no repercussions at all for Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, you did see that he and Sean Hannity were going at it. Now, I guess Kimmel has apologized, but just the stuff that Kimmel says, and he's not funny, he's just mean.
His apology was also sarcastic and not really inclined to be legitimate. So, I mean, when we went at it with Joy Behar said some very inappropriate things about Christians and Mike Pence and his faith. And we went after her. And she tried to laugh it off the next day, and that didn't work. And we went after her. We went after their advertisers. But eventually, she came out and said she was sorry. First, she reached out to Mike Pence and apologized, and he accepted her apology because he's a good guy. Then she apologized in public, and we dropped it. Okay. We made the point, and we didn't keep on going to war. I've even been on TV with Joy Behar, and shockingly, when I was on, we agreed. So, I mean, not everybody on the left is the enemy on every issue, and they shouldn't look at everybody on the right as the enemy on every issue. But they do. And that's very sad. And so, where that takes our country is to a very awful place. Kurt Schlichter, I assume.
Right.
He writes for Town Hall, and Kurt, back in 2016, wrote a pretty telling op-ed that basically said the Democrats lose the second Civil War like they lost the first one. And he kind of looked at what would happen if a Hillary Clinton-led government cracked down on people and caused, a civil war, or if Democrats or liberals rose up against a Republican leadership, whichever way. And Kurt, because he served in Bosnia during the Bosnian Civil War, he basically strongly advocates against it, even though he gets criticized for it. He says, it's a bad thing. We don't want to see this. But I'll tell you, increasingly, I see comments on the left, like that one Jack Dorsey tweeted out that story, that are all, we want to destroy you. Well, Kurt's comment about that story, because he wrote a column on it, was, they want to, they think conservatives are going to go along and just accept being destroyed, and that's just not going to happen.
Right.
It's a liberal fantasy. So you can only push people so far. We've always been a nation that's believed in compromise, and sometimes that compromise, has been very difficult. Trying to sort through the founders, trying to build a nation that no one had ever built a nation like we did, and also contend with problems like slavery, which I've always felt is really the absolute worst thing government can ever do to you. Government killing you is nowhere near as bad as government enslaving you, where you have to suffer every single day. So, I've always been very opposed, and I even use some of my, my private charity money toward groups like International Justice Mission that fight slavery around the world. So, we've seen how difficult those compromises are, but they've led us to the place where we are, where people are free, and people are free to say whatever they want, just as long as it's not on social media anymore, because now it gets redacted. And I fear the left doesn't really embrace much of the Constitution anymore. And like the First Amendment. The First Amendment has gone from being an amendment that defends 5 different rights to an amendment that defends part of one. The press now views the First Amendment as being freedom of the press, meaning traditional press, not anybody else. And they don't even worry about freedom of religion, freedom of speech. So you don't, or even the President of the United States doesn't have the right to criticize them. But they have the right to say absolutely anything they want and be as wrong as they want to be. Brian Ross from ABC, the famous tanking the stock market problem, he didn't even lose his job. They can say whatever they want, very little repercussions.
Dan Gaynor, we always appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
Oh, it's always fun to talk in Idaho, and I'll get out there one of these days. One of these days you'll meet me in person.
We look forward to that, and hello to all the West Coast Gainers. Take care, sir.
Oh, yeah. I got to leave it. I've still got 2 unmarried nieces, so there's always hope for me to come west just for that.
That would be awesome.
Sounds good, man. You take care.
Take care. All right, Dan Gaynor,
right.
Coming up. Your thoughts on the president's lawyer getting arrested. Is this a raid? Is Trump done? Or is this persecution? I'd love to hear from you next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be part of your day. Top story across the country, around the world. The president's lawyer being rounded up. By the way, do want to remind you, Kevin Miller's cash code times for your chance to win up to $5,000 are 605-805 during the Kevin Miller program, Kevin Miller Mornings, and 305 with the Great American Sean Hannity Afternoons. Listen weekdays for your chance to win up to $5,000. More details at KIDOTalkRadio.com. R&R, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, R&R.
Good morning, K. Revere Millie.
How goes it, brother?
I've got 3 things. I think you posed a question this morning that just is enlightening. I think you and Ray and the Millie militia are the human beings that are going to revamp the criminal justice system in Oregon and Ontario, clear up to Walla Walla. I'm very certain that there are huge amounts of people listening right now that are not being allowed to hear your voice, and Walla Walla, especially in Ontario. And I know maybe it was in jest yesterday when you were inviting Oregon to secede, Eastern Oregon. Let's take Burns clear up to Biggs Junction, Highway 97, and annex them and let all the potheads stay on that side of the river, and all the true purists. And now I'm speaking about the Native Americans. And then I agree to help pay some bills. When you endorse somebody, Mr. K. Revere Millie, like the Emerald Kennels, I know people that love and adore dogs as I do. They really put in the day, and when they see the happy faces of their beloved pets, that's pretty much why they go through a day sometime.
Oh, that's what I live for.
Well, and that brings up, I studied hydrology, and blessed to be, it's no secret now, right out of the Columbia Gorge. And when they fill these canals, Kevin, it's just imperative that everybody stays back. The velocity and the volume of the water coming in now, and everybody and their dogs, there's the term, everybody and their dog just needs to stay back and just obey the trespass rules and the Boise Rivers. Yeah.
Times have changed because, my wife grew up here, and she was telling me, back in her day, they would, people would jump in the canals and do all these crazy things.
In inner tubes, Millie, in inner tubes.
Yeah.
And just go for it. Mrs. Miller and your mom are your biggest advocates, but yeah, you're adorable. And one more time, simultaneous broadcast in Espani, because the people I live with and depend on for everything from cleaning the yards and harvesting fruit and working at the meat packing. They've been on shift since 0400, and all of us would love to hear your voice in our native tongue, Espani.
I'll have to work on that. R&R, God bless.
And God bless you, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a great man. Our man R&R out fishing this morning. Let's fish for some traffic. And do want to remind you, coming up this week on Thank You Thursdays, listen for your chance to win an hour of massage. That's right, an hour of massage. Although I think I spelled it message here. An hour massage from Massage Envy. Can't wait to go to Great Power Learning to learn how to spell. Anyway, and a prize pack from the Idaho Lottery. That's coming up on Thank You Thursdays. You're not familiar with Thank You Thursdays. It's our way during the spring and fall of thanking you and promoting local businesses. We thank them for giving us the opportunity to reward you for listening to our great show here. Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up next, a national champion doesn't have an issue visiting the White House, and the president's attorney raided. A lot going on this morning. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Time Not to Be Shy is next with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. By the way, don't forget, coming up this week, Promote Our School, Secure Our Future is at Meridian Technical Charter School this Thursday. Meridian Technical Charter School, Promote Our School, Secure Our Future on KIDO Talk Radio. Brought to you by CapEd Credit Union and Team Mazda Subaru. And you can always reach me on Twitter at Kevin Miller Show. The station is at KIDO Talk Radio. It's funny. I never really get into social media because this is the real social media, is you and I interacting each and every morning. But it does give us some content, and that's what we're always looking for. I can remember speaking to folks all the time, talking about content. And, when you're talking to someone and they're, yapping to you or what have you, you can always look at them and say, look, I don't find what you're doing compelling. Unless you give me good content, it's time for you to go. That's coming up in a minute. But first, our great friend Jeff Monasso, who, by the way, according to my Twitter notifications, recently tweeted in a while, joins us now to talk a little bit about Fox and Wheels. Good morning, Jeff.
You got my first tweet in 3 weeks? Awesome. Good to hear.
Yes, you're on the media list. Apparently, there's going to be a big list of all the media people. But
don't follow me. You're not going to find much.
I'm with you on that. So, what's the most expensive cost drivers faced last year?
Well, it depends on where you live. Obviously, you've got direct costs, which are maintenance, fuel, insurance, toll fees, if that applies. But almost a third of that, again, depending on where you live, is coming from parking fees to the tune of over $3,000 on average. That from the latest report from a transportation analytics company, INRIX, that shows the top 50 or the top 10, I should say, states. San Francisco is at 3, Los Angeles 2, and New York City, the average parking fee, or yearly parking fee, is $5,400 just to park your car in 2017. That's the latest from that report. And then there's also the indirect costs, which include wasted time and gas burned while you're wasting time, and fines and tickets, which big cities are notorious for. So shelling out a ton of money to live in these big cities, and you haven't even gotten to work yet.
Indeed, Jeff Monasso joining us here. It just seems like the cost of, owning and driving a vehicle continues to go up. Do you ever believe in the whole thing that there'll be a generation, maybe 2 or 3 after ours, that, they won't own vehicles? Everything will be Uber and Lyft or some other app, or autonomous vehicles will just, pick you up like some people ride the bus.
Possibly. I don't see it at this point. I mean, it's really consumer driven and supply and demand. And right now, there's a supply of vehicles that people want, and people want to be able to drive. They want to be able to steer. They want to be able to use their own foot pedals and come and go as they want. And that's just kind of how where we're at right now. Possibly in the future, particularly in more urban areas, that might be the case. We'll use things like that. But you look at rural America, like where you're at. I don't envision people depending on Ubers and Lyfts and things like that to get them up to the mountains or anything like that, or out to the ranch. Particularly when it's snowing right now, technology hasn't proved to be able to be that successful in terms of trying to deal with weather, in terms of autonomy, self-driving, things like that.
Jeff Monasso, finally, any more gadgets or zip-zam booms that we're going to be seeing on our cars anytime soon that you can reveal to us?
Gadgets or zip-zam booms? No, I mean we're still in this. It's almost like a race to the moon. We're racing to find these self-driving cars that nobody seems to be all that interested in. We're racing for these vehicles that are able to power themselves via batteries that not a ton of people are interested in. I mean, you look at Tesla. Tesla would be non-existent if it wasn't subsidized, and so I think that's one of the biggest stories around that it's this giant race to the moon of self-driving and electric cars that right now people aren't all really that interested in if you really take a close look. But the gadgets that we're seeing, I mean, look, it's safety. It's the coolest part of this space race of technological wonders and genius in our vehicles. It's the safety features that we're seeing that really are saving a lot of lives.
Jeff Monosso, we look forward to another tweet in maybe about 2 or 3 weeks.
You got it, Kevin.
Take care, sir. Our great friend Jeff Monosso. So, okay, getting back to Twitter. So, I don't know, a lot of people in the media seem to like Twitter. To me, it's another distraction. In fact, if you were watching Homeland this weekend, what was it? They came up with the term UI. You know what a UI is? I think we're going to start using the term UI, useful idiots. That's right. That's how the Russians co-op people that aren't traitors. They're just useful idiots. But and do I want to say everybody on Twitter is a useful idiot? No, not really. But I can remember when we were doing what was it on the now defunct Fox 12, and as soon as they lost their Fox affiliate, the station went under. But people would tweet stuff about me all the time, and I would do this commentary called The Bottom Line. And in reality, it didn't really matter to me. Now, when you make things up and you slander people, yes, then I think there's a time for response or something of that nature. But I'm looking at this, and this is a point of conversation from Pete, who says, I was disgusted this morning to hear Kevin Miller call liberals the enemy. Republicans and Democrats are not the enemy of America. They both believe they are working in the best interests of America. This kind of talk is why Americans are so divided. Well, Pete, I think you're being naive. The libs are trying to obstruct President Trump. The libs are the ones that have caused your health insurance to go up. The libs under President Obama have divided us so much. And when we conservatives have enough guts through this show, the Kevin Miller Show at KIDO Talk Radio at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, have enough guts to call the libs out, well, then we're vilified. No, Americans are divided because of the liberal progressive agenda that has culturally shifted our great nation drastically left in the past 8 years. A leftist vote that we never endorsed. A leftist tilt that was forced upon us by former President Obama, that vilified people of conservatism, of morals, of ethics. If you don't believe me, go back to the argument about marriage and compare it to the argument about pot. On one, it's a states' rights issue. On the other, it isn't. On one, Obama and others did not like how states were deciding things, so they took it to the courts. On the other, they don't like the federal law saying if you smoke dope, you're going to jail, so they've decided not to enforce it. Now, Donald Trump is under fire, under siege, and I believe they are trying to throw Donald Trump out of the office. When I speak of the libs, you're telling me that there's something great about Chuck Schumer, about Nancy Pelosi, let's take a look at Pete's argument here, that Nancy Pelosi wants to work together? Really? To me, sir, that's naive. And I love it, but I love your opinion, so thank you. And then we have another young lady, her name is Terry, who says, that's one of the reasons I no longer listen to Kevin Miller in the mornings, and I'm a Republican. Well, I gave her a big retweet. Why? Because we call it like it is? You're naive to do this. You're naive to say that when Governor Otter and the state legislature passed a gas tax at 1 in the morning, it was a good thing. Have the roads improved? Have we caught up with all of our road budgets? That's not being negative. That's just telling the truth. So, I mean, if there are people at 580-5436 that can tell me the good that the libs do, I'd like to hear it. I'm not above that. But to sit there and say you're disgusted, well, prove your point. It's very easy to throw sticks and stones, but it's not so easy to prove your point. Now, we can, again, and we're just as tough on establishment Republicans as we are on the libs. But, I mean, what's wrong with calling people libs? It's short for liberal, right? And here's it's my own experiment. When someone comes up to you, they're never proud to be a lib. Now, I can respect the true believers that are libs. I can respect them because they'll say, "Hey, I'm a lib. I'm down with Bernie Sanders." But the ones that are, well, I'm not as extreme as you. Well, no, you're a lib. And why not have a little fun with it? I love this but calling people out is disgusting. Please show me where the libs, the Democrats, have improved America. That's a blanket statement. I get it. But tell me where it is. Planned Parenthood? We can go back to that expose. Funding that organization, that's good for America. That's bringing people together, vilifying people that want to save the lives of babies. Like I said, it's just funny how people get so carried away with this. And look, Pete and Terry, good for you, but I love this. I'm not listening. Well, good. As I've said before to people here and everywhere else, it's not for everyone. But if you believe in America and you're not naive, well, we'd like to be your perfect cup of coffee every morning. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. More of your calls next. And the president is mad at the FBI.
The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in.
I love President Trump because unlike his predecessors, he doesn't mince words. Jeff Sessions would not be the Attorney General. So we'll talk a little bit about that. By the way, coming up in less than 20 minutes, Dr. Tommy Ahlquist answers what Raul Labrador had to say, what Congressman Labrador had to say about him yesterday concerning negative ads, accusations in the campaign, and his conservative credentials. That and more next with good old K-Billy, Kevin Miller in the morning. Still fighting this cough, I'm sorry, on KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you, Ray Amaya. Love the Three Stooges, Donald Trump and the independent prosecutor. Kevin Miller in the morning. The president upset that his lawyer's office was raided. We'll get to that. But first, your phone calls. And we go to Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. Most of all, I want to compliment you for having the courage to raise the question on the penitentiary issue. Of all the Butch Otter scandals, that one had the most tragic consequences because people got lost. Some people lost their lives. People got beaten. People got molested out there. And like all the theme, and it has a common theme with all the other scandals, whether it was on the state tax commission, the land board, the transportation department, and the Pam Lowe scandals, was basically somebody was well politically connected, got the job or got the position, was a big cash donor, and basically decisions were not based on merit. And this has been this common theme of this administration. And the consequences in this, and I tried to raise that issue with your competition across the league, they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. In a lot of ways, this deserves, even of all the scandals, the most kind of investigation. And I also might say that Labrador was the only candidate I've ever heard in this race that's talked about the subject in an intelligent way and in a knowledgeable way. I don't think that...
you notice we were pushing him on whether or not there would be prosecutions if he were elected. That's where we were going. And look, we wish everybody well, but some people are in cahoots with the governor and some people tell the truth.
Well, I know a lot. And there was a friend of mine who was attacked by the name of Chris Pinnacle, who basically the governor put a no trespass charge because he asked questions about Milk for Terror on the State Board of Education, which the governor had no authority to do that. And, of course, he should have appealed to the federal court system around the state court because basically the appeals court of Idaho, for all three of Butch's appointments, upheld the governor's position that the governor had a right to declare, use the trespass laws to declare somebody persona non grata on the Capitol grounds. When there was no grounds for I don't think the governor has the authority to determine who's allowed on the state Capitol grounds and who isn't. And outside of public safety reasons.
Well, the prisons is a fascinating story that doesn't get a lot of coverage, and we shall see how it plays out.
I sure hope that they do something about it. And also, I wanted to also raise the issue that Alquist Alquist is being very disingenuous when he claims that he doesn't know who, he has nothing to do with these attack ads, that's independent from him. That if he decided to stop it, it would stop right away. I mean, that to me shows me the lack of integrity on the part of Mr. Alquist, that he can't even tell the truth on what something that's very obvious here.
Well, you'll get a chance to hear Dr. Alquist coming up in less than 10 minutes, and we'll see how it plays out.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye. Before we get to Paul in Utah, traffic and weather. And Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's go to Paul in Utah. Paul, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Paul.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good, sir. I'm commending those, and I'd like to give just a word of exhortation. I'm commending those who really study to go back and study what a republic is. Our forefathers wrote a constitution, but they warned us. They warned us about a very deadly, ingratiating company of individuals that basically formed our Declaration of Independence. And today, you have to ask yourself a question: is that ingratiating power still in the forefront of this next revolution? I believe it is. And I believe that if we look back towards historical truth, it's very evident who we're fighting against. And as they came into this country and slowly whittled their way towards destroying our Constitution, it's imperative that people go back and find out who our forefathers were talking about.
It's called the Federalist Papers. Fox News Radio next. Good morning, KIDO Talk Radio.